a second. Okay. So we're live, but let me just do a quick hi. I'm Kimberly Hunt, and we'll get started in a few minutes. We want to give a chance for our friends and fans to join us, but I am here today with JD Edwards and looking forward to a live author interview. It's going to be great, but we'll just hang out here for a second and give some time for people to join us. I hope that we've spread the word sufficiently.
Hope so.
Yeah. And are you able to see, JD, as people join and add comments, or do you have that on your side? Do you have the functionality?
I don't. I have a private chat and I have comments.
Okay, you'll see as people join and leave comments. I'm hoping that we'll get some questions and make this a little interactive. But as we're waiting for people to join and ask their questions, I've got plenty for you.
Okay.
And then the other nice thing is that after we're finished with this live interview, I'll send you a link for the recording so that anybody that was unable to make it will be able to catch up later.
Okay, good. I've had a few requests for that already.
Oh, perfect. All right, so let me just bring people up to speed. Hello, I'm Kimberly Hunt with Revision to Vision. I am a freelance editor, and I'm very excited today to have JD Edwards, author of so many works, but he will go through and he will let you know where you can find his writing. We're going to talk a lot today about an upcoming release, Indomitable. Hey, I think we have a Lori Bell maybe joining us as well.
That's my sister.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So I want to say a quick side note for the people joining, whether they're joining live or watching later. If this is, if you're finding the content and the format very helpful and exciting and you want to see more of it, I'd love you to take a look at Revision to Vision's blog, because we do author interviews like this. We do book reviews and writing and editing tips. So check it out. You'll find maybe some more details of what we're going to just dip a toe into today. So take a look and send some suggestions for future book reviews. And if we have fellow authors joining us, let me know. I'd love to invite you on. So, hey, who's a JC Edwards? Is this like a JD Edwards?
That's my dad, John Edwards.
Okay, hello. Very nice. So again, to recap for those just joining, I just want to say one last time that I'm Kimberly Hunt and I'm here with JD Edwards. We have a live author interview here for you today, and I'd love for viewers to send their questions. But while we get started, we'll get started with mine. So I'll go first. Welcome, JD. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I'd love to get to know a little bit more about you before we dive into your work, if that's okay.
Okay.
And I'm going to focus on your upcoming release of Indomitable because I'm so excited and I want everybody to hear how much work has gone into that and how that's how you make an amazing novel. So you are considered Twitter writing community royalty to many, and you're very active in the discussions on Twitter and helpful to authors. How has your engagement evolved over the years? Because you've been a longtime member.
I have been. In fact, I started in 2010, but it was more for politics, and that Twitter's a cesspool. So I ended up getting out of the politics side and creating a writing only account in 2012, and I don't do politics anymore. I leave that completely alone. But I used it to pump my books. I didn't have any interaction with the writing community, and it wasn't until about 2016 when I rewrote the Fairy Chronicles. I had 300 followers, and I really wanted to grow. And I started seeing people on videos. iWriterly is a good video. She talks about how to use Twitter and social media effectively. And she said that if you want to get followers, the best way to do that is to give something back to the community. So, okay. So I started following people and engaging with people, and I started noticing my followers are rising, but it still is maybe about 1,000 people. And so then I started a writing lift, giving support to other writers. And that turned into 3 pages of tweets. And I started thinking, this is, it's just a mess. It was a hot mess. It was just a list of names and nobody knew anything about them. And I wanted to show people, my followers especially, that, hey, I care enough about you to learn about what you're interested in. So I started separating them by genre, and 3 pages has now grown to 17 pages. And I do this every Friday. It used to just be a follow Friday, but then Twitter changed the rules to where they're going to ban people who did follow trains. So I changed to Friendship Friday, and got around Twitter's rules that way.
Yeah. And it is great to shift. Not only, I agree with you that people have asked me, how can you be on Twitter? It brings you down. And I said, no, I only pay attention to the hashtag writing community. And I find that it's the opposite, that the writers out there, published and unpublished, are definitely lifting each other up. And that shift from whether it's, non-writerly topics or that shift from solely self-promotion to lifting others up has been just phenomenal to watch and be a part of. So I praise you for that. Your friendship your friendship Friday is like my indication of, yes, it's the weekend. I love it. And it's become quite expensive.
I didn't get to it till noon today. Work problems are blowing up, so I had to take care of them.
Yes, of course. So what compels you to take the time to do that each week?
I just want to show support to people. Like I said, I had about 1,000 followers, and I really wanted to, build my fan base. And there was a person, one of my followers, Joe Kavanaugh. He went to bat for me, and he said, "Hey, writing community, follow this guy. He's interactive, he's fun. You'll like him." And because of Joe, I started jumping to 3,000 followers and 5,000. Then it was almost 10,000 followers. I was like, my goodness, I never dreamed about that. So I wanted to kind of pay it forward and
awesome.
Be like Joe Kavanaugh.
Well done.
I even wrote him into my 4th book, the Priestess of Fairy. He's one of the Native Americans. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love using the list to follow the authors and the genres that I enjoy. So it's, like I said, I look forward to it every Friday. So can you share some of your life experience that have influenced your favorite stories?
Oh, man. Well, for some of the favorite stories I like are from Celtic mythology. And I've read stuff by Stephen Lawhead and Terry Brooks, and they had some stuff about Celtic mythology, but not a lot. Tolkien did a little bit on fairies, and he wrote a book called, or it was an essay. It was called on fairy stories. And when I read that, he had a line in there that said, Andrew Lang quote, "He who would enter into the kingdom of fairy must have the heart of a child." And there's something about that quote that just spoke to me. And from that, I wrote the first 5 chapters of The Science of Fairy from that one sentence.
What a spark.
And as I love genealogy, and as I've been studying my family, we came from Scotland, but before that we came from Wales. And we just have a deep roots in the Celtic the Celtic genre, the Celtic culture, and I wanted to kind of represent that in literature, because hardly anybody writes about that. Rick Riordan, Percy Jackson, he does Egypt, Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Roman mythology. He doesn't touch Celtic mythology. So it's an untapped resource. So that's what's driven me to do that.
Yeah, I admire all the work that you put into the research. And I have a relative who has looked into our family, and I begged to see her work because I don't want to do it myself. But it's awesome. So one of the other things that I learned about you is that you share a passion for volunteering.
I do.
Me. And I wanted to ask how you were making the world a better place, and kind of prompt that, do you feel like scouting does this?
But it does. I was in Boy Scouts with my son from 2010 until this year when he turned 18. And we went ahead and stepped out then, so I could focus on writing. But when I moved from scouting, I moved directly into Freemasons, which, my family has a long history in that too. The earliest recorded Freemason I can find is 1813.
Mm.
George Edwards from Indomitable was a master mason. So I have his index card showing all the positions he attained and when he attained them, and it's very interesting. So Freemasonry is also a charitable organization.
Mhm.
So that's another way that I give back.
So that's awesome. And I'd love to, I'm slow on the uptake here, but I wanted to do a little like, hey, how about some thumbs up for how you give back? I love it. But it's seriously the maintaining the environment, the feeding the hungry. These are all things that that I also work on and appreciate and applaud you for. So let's talk a little bit about your writing. I'd like to know where we can find your work. Give us some of like your fairy chronicles and your flash fiction, and give us the kind of how we can read up on you and check it
Okay.
out.
Well, I have I don't know if we can put it in the comments section, but
Mhm.
I have an account called Linktree. And on
Mhm.
Linktree, it has a lot of links with, all of my books. And when you click on it, it goes directly to that book. So on,
Perfect.
Fairy Chronicles, you can grab them. They're on Amazon. They're also on
Mhm.
Lulu. So you could go to my Lulu author page and find them
Mhm.
there also. I have an Amazon author page listed on that. For the flash fiction, you'd have to buy the anthologies. Lulu isn't going to let those go for free,
Mhm.
unfortunately. But the Soul Reaper, which just won Share Your Scare for this year,
Mhm.
and Killing Time, which won in 2019, those are available in the Lulu anthologies. But my other flash fictions like Sister Acts and Satan Santa, those are available on Wattpad for free, and I have links to those
Mhm.
on Linktree also.
Perfect. Yeah, so we have to wait till February for Indomitable. Is that correct?
Yes, you do. Yeah, I want to release it during Black History Month.
Oh, that's perfect. That was very thoughtful. Yeah. So, most of my experience has been in editing novels, and I wanted to hear what you feel is important. Like, what's the difference for if I'm getting a little bit more work in the flash fiction area?
Well, the flash fiction is only 1,500 words, so
Hmm.
when you're writing the book, you can't put in a lot of fluff and narration. You have to just move, move, move.
Hmm.
It's very action driven, very dialogue driven,
Yeah.
very little narration.
Hmm.
The rules still apply, but it's almost all dialogue. And maybe a sentence or two of narration between the dialogue, but
Hmm.
it's just action packed. And
Yeah.
trying to do a complete story in 5 pages is just insane. But I love the challenge.
I love it though. I love the concision. I have helped quite a few authors trim and tighten up, and I guess I have a knack for it. I also have a love for it. So I've been consuming more short stories and on on my own time and seeing a lot more requests for help with shorter than novels, and some have been novellas, but most of the recent work has been either short stories or flash fiction, and I hesitate. I let every author know I'm like, I'm very inexperienced at that. So you're getting a deal because I'm not quite confident just yet, but I do have the knack for trimming and bringing concision. So it's fun. I definitely love the genre. Or is that considered a genre? Like the
I
format?
think
I
I
guess.
think it is. I think it is. I mean, it's still going to be horror or thriller or
Hmm.
something along those lines. Sister Acts is technically a murder mystery
Hmm.
versus horror. That's why it didn't. That's why it didn't win.
Yeah.
That you're not supposed to uh, specify a certain religion. So when I
Mm.
talk about Catholic priests and things, that kind of disqualified me from the competition. But that's okay.
Wasn't appreciated.
No, it wasn't. It violated the rules.
So tell us, how is Indomitable different than your previous books, than the Fairy Chronicles?
Well, the Fairy Chronicles are purely fiction.
Hmm.
It, if I do base it in when it is based on Earth in the Fairy Chronicles,
Hmm.
it's based on real places, but not necessarily real events.
Hmm.
With Indomitable, it's based almost entirely on facts, and the fiction comes where I connect fact A to fact B. You know, uh, for instance, we know that John Rankin was an
Mhm.
abolitionist and freed slaves. We know that Eliza escaped slavery in Kentucky and went to John Rankin. That's historical fact. We also know that she went to Red Oak Church. That's historical fact. Well, from there, they don't tell you every stop she went on. We
Yeah.
know that she was next in Sardinia. Well, that's an hour away. She had to stop at other stops because they couldn't take the carts only went 5 miles an hour.
Mm.
So you couldn't travel like you would today. So you have to, so I had to plan out on Google Maps where all these different stops were and figure out how
Mhm.
many hours it took. And that told me where she would stop. So I know that George Edwards' house, the Eagle Creek, uh, the Eagle Creek Station, I think.
Mhm.
Uh, I know that that one was right after Red Oak. So
Okay.
while there's no historical fact that says she stopped there,
Mhm.
logic would dictate that she probably did because you're just being funneled from one place to another, especially when your master's chasing you. You know,
Mhm.
you can't be in a cart for an hour. You
Yeah.
know, you'll get caught. So they want to jump from one station to another that's very close. So
Mhm.
I use those leaps of logic to write the fiction part, but yet I incorporated it with facts. So
Mhm.
it's more fact than fiction.
It's
There's a
amazing, and it's something I love to with each book I read to learn something. So that's why historical fiction is one of the genres that I love so much, is because I feel like I walk away with learning something, but I got away with doing it in an entertaining way.
yeah.
Yeah. So, so this is an interesting. When I heard how long you were working on the Fairy Chronicles, it made me want to ask the question of how long did it take you to complete Indomitable?
Well, Fairy Chronicles, it took a total of 17 years.
That's a
From
long
that,
time.
it is. Well, you have major rewrites, and
Mhm.
I had 107 rejections. So of course that discouraged me. So I put it off to the
Mhm.
side for a couple of years and learned editing processes. So the whole thing for 4 books took me 17 years.
Mhm.
Indomitable took me 18 months, and the only reason it took me that long was I put it up to the side for 6 months.
Mm.
Uh, Otherwise, it would have taken me a year. I was writing it right around the time of the George Floyd killing,
Okay.
and when for the readers who aren't familiar with Indomitable, it's about Eliza Harris, who was a fictional character in Uncle Tom's Cabin, but she was a real character who escaped slavery from Kentucky in 1838. And she ran across the semi-frozen Ohio River, plunging in 3 times
Mm.
with a toddler, and managed to
Oh.
survive to the other side, where she was funneled to freedom in Canada. Well, uh, in in that story, I lost my train of thought now. With Indomitable, you're oh, where was I? I'm sorry.
No, no worries. We were talking about why it only took you
Oh
the
yeah, sorry.
year.
So when I'm writing about the like the slave owner who's chasing her,
Mhm.
I want it to be realistic, so I put myself in the mind of my characters.
Mhm.
Well, that was very difficult to be in the mind of a racist slave owner.
Mhm.
And when you're in that mindset at the time of the George Floyd killing, it was too much for me. I couldn't do it. I
Yeah.
had to step out of the book and to step out of the character and just let it sit until things calmed down politically before I dove back into this book, because it was too traumatic for me to be in that mind space
Yeah.
when with everything that was going on.
I see. I didn't realize that was around the same time, and that was the
Yeah,
reason for a pause. Okay. Well, I appreciate the quality that you bring to your work and the dedication. We're going to talk a little bit about editing coming up, but as a quick reminder to our followers to make sure you turn on notifications and like the Revision Division page so you can check out these future live videos. But before we dive into editing, let's take some questions from your fans. Is there anybody out there that would like to add to my questions for JD? So I'm a bit of a geek about process, and that's where I was about to take us, because I really love your tweets where you're helping. And I think one of the ones that really stood out to me was your multi-step process that you take before publishing your work. And so I was hoping that you would share some of this rigorous process that you use. I found
sure.
it super helpful.
Okay, well, like I said, when I was doing the Fairy Chronicles, I would
Mhm.
write it and I try to publish it, but I actually paid for two professional editors. It cost me over
Mhm.
$5,000, and they didn't do anything. They ended up ruining my book. They didn't. Yeah, I still had 107 rejections after having professional, highly qualified editors take a crack at it. So I
Mhm.
started doing research on my own, looking up, Googling things. What are editors' top 10 things they don't like to see? What are agents' top 10 things they don't like to see? And
Mhm.
I use that to compile a list of telling words I hated, filling words I hated. And so then I started come up a process. It took me 6 months to edit the first book with this process. First, I run Grammarly and Spell
Mhm.
Checker. And those who don't use Grammarly, it's a free product. You can get the premium version, but the free product does well, especially in the early stages. And I just corrected anything that was what they call low hanging fruit.
Mhm.
Just the easy stuff. Then I
Yeah.
did a deep dive in it. I read my book line by line in my head to see
Mhm.
if it kind of flowed right. See were there any issues of continuity, things that didn't match up.
Yeah.
Kind of tried to step out of writer mode and into reader mode. It's like, okay, if I'm reading this book for fun, what sort of things would I find as a reader that I wouldn't like?
Mhm.
uh, then I went through and I looked for all the adverbs. So
Yep.
that's thousands of them, when I first
Mhm.
started. Because I just typed in, a search on Word for ly, and anything that had an ly in it popped up. Then I removed all the filler words. Then once I did all that, I ran Grammarly again because when I'm editing, sometimes I think I'm typing a to or an and or some sort of word like that, and I'll miss it, and then it doesn't sound right.
Right.
So, but then once I got done with all that, I listened to it, and this is where
Mhm.
a lot of people don't do this, but
Yes.
Word 2016 doesn't have it, but Office 365 does, where uh, you can listen to your book.
Mhm.
Um, in Word 2016, you can have a narrator function, but that doesn't work too as well as the one in 365. If you don't have that, you can also save it as a PDF file.
Mhm.
And Adobe PDF Reader has accessibility options for people who are blind. You can listen to the book that way.
Mhm.
You can't really change the voice. I think it comes with three voices, but it's something. It allows you to hear
Yeah.
it read back to you. If you don't have that, you can save it as a PDF. And Google Chrome has an extension called Read Aloud,
Mhm.
and you just upload the file to it's not to the cloud. You just upload it to a temporary location and let Google read back to you. And that has a lot of voices to choose from. So,
Yeah.
if you want to, I have it read to me in British English since the characters are British,
That's good.
just because I want to hear how it would sound in
Mhm.
that dialect. So,
Mhm.
anyway, once you listen to it, your ears pick up what your eyes will skip.
Yes.
And then I go back and I run Grammarly again because when I make edits, I always make mistakes.
Mhm.
Once I get all that done, I find an alpha reader. Now, a lot of
Mhm.
people talk about beta readers. So an alpha reader is a poor member of your family who is forced to read through this rough draft, you know. And God bless my wife; has been my alpha reader since day one,
Mhm.
and she's read through these things multiple times, multiple versions. But she'll find the things that I'll miss,
Yeah.
even with all these programs. Then I'll fix them. I'll run Grammarly again. Then I'll listen to it again.
Yeah.
Once I've done that, now I've ran Grammarly what 4 times. I've had an
Mhm.
alpha reader look over it. I've listened to it twice. That's when I send it on to beta readers. By
Mhm.
that point, it should be polished and uh, you know crisp and ready to go. And in the case of Indomitable, I added a 12th step, which is sensitivity readers.
Oh,
Uh,
that's good.
as a white author, it's hard for me to you know understand the struggles of the black community, and I want to make sure I'm being sensitive to the black community. So
Mhm.
I found people of color who are willing to read the book and give me sensitivity insights. And I there were some things I did not know were racist, and I'm glad they brought it up to me. I didn't
Yeah.
know that using the word squaw to refer to a female Native American was racist.
Mm,
because I transcribe journals from the 1850s, and they use that term all the time. Well,
mhm.
it wasn't racist in 1850. It is in 2020, so or
Right.
2021. So those are things that I didn't realize, and I'm glad that the sensitivity readers brought those to my attention so I could fix them, and
Mhm.
not alienate a whole section of readership.
Absolutely. Yep. So, if I could just tell you the similarities in my process,
Okay.
because I fully support what you're doing. I do the extensive read through first, checking again, even as an editor, when I'm making changes, you could introduce errors. So the same kind of thing, rechecking the work. I'm not familiar with and have not used Grammarly, but I do. Put manuscripts through not only my own word for word reading, but I put it through some macros to catch consistency, and I also use Perfect It to compare it with
Oh,
especially now with the add-in with the Chicago Manual style. It's super helpful. So I was interested in because I do it mostly. The macros and the Perfected are from a consistency standpoint. I was looking for, does Grammarly help with like a punctuation checker? Is there something out there that is catching, the dreaded commas? And so, but then after doing all of the the human read through and the programs, I also use an audio pass to catch what maybe my eyes didn't, and it's fantastic. Every time it's worth the hours that I spend doing an audio pass because I
hmm,
catch at least two things, like at least. So it's super helpful and worth it. Sometimes it's a matter of, is this just an awkward flow rather than an error, and you'll spot that. Or if I'm listening and I find, oh, my mind's kind of wandering and I'm not paying attention anymore, that says to me, okay, well, maybe we have a pace problem, or maybe like, we could tighten this up and make it more concise in this area. So I think the audio is a super helpful tip. It's a step that shouldn't be skipped. And then I wanted to say, back to your filler and filter, just to kind of give a helpful clarification on terminology. So if you have the time, authors can go through their manuscripts manually, looking for those filler words that you talked about. And
right.
so searching for words like just or that or rather, quite, delete. You have a nice extensive list that we can share out. But in most cases, the sentence is stronger without them, and so it's really good to look for those and pull them out. Um, and the adverbs are included in that. But when I'm talking about filter words, it's also, you have this on your list as well. Those filter words are sometimes indicative of telling, so they're helpful
Hmm.
to search through the manuscript and find, just as kind of a flag for, hey, I should pay attention. I've got a lot of telling going on in this area, and so an author may do this manually because they have the time and maybe not the funds for an editor, but an editor may have like the programs and the experience of going through so many manuscripts to be able to find those things, those words to flag. So I just wanted to call that out, whether that there are many avenues out there and there's steps worth following.
Right.
So we've got questions. I've been monopolizing. Let me give a chance out there. People want to know: is there any genealogical relationship to George Edwards and other characters in Indomitable?
Yes, there are. George Edwards is my five times great grandfather,
So
and
cool. And
the
he's in your book.
he's in my book. He is.
Okay.
He married a woman named Susanna Downing
Hmm.
in 1794 in Mason County, Kentucky, where Eliza escaped from.
Okay.
And when I was looking up Eliza, um, it doesn't say who her master is. All we know is that her master was kind at one time and then wanted to sell her baby.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. That's all we know. And we know that he lived in Mason County, directly across from Ripley,
Mm-hmm.
Ohio, across the Ohio River. Well, that's where two people. I looked them up in the census in 1830 and 1840 just to get a good mix. This is 1838.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see who were the largest slave owners and plantation owners in the census records, and there
Mm-hmm.
were two families, and one of those was Reason Downing. the brother to Susanna Downing or brother-in-law to George Edwards.
Okay.
So there's a 50-50 chance that, one side of my family owned Eliza while the other side of my family freed Eliza.
That
So,
is really interesting.
so I decided to do that. And I
Mhm.
had Eliza, you learned this early on, so I'm not going to spoil anything, but Eliza is the daughter of the other large plantation owner in Mason County. Uh,
Okay.
and his name is Eli, where I
Mhm.
thought that'd be a good way. That'd be a reason they would name her Eliza if she was the
Mhm.
daughter of the slave owner. So, yeah, there, I did that. There's also a genealogical relationship with my paternal grandmother. Her last name was
Mhm.
Hayslip. Well,
Mhm.
my Hayslip family, John Hayslip, who lived in just maybe 5 miles from George Edwards in another
Mhm.
county, he was on a different branch of the Underground Railroad. Uh, anyway, his wife's last name was Lockhart,
Mhm.
Margaret Lockhart. She was a cousin of Jesse Lockhart, who was an abolitionist and one of the people in Russellville that funneled slaves through the Underground Railroad once they left George Edwards' house.
Mhm.
Well, a cousin to Jesse Lockhart is John Rankin. So the Rankins, the Lockharts, the Edwards, the Hayslips, they're all kind of tied together. And I noticed that when I was writing an article about the Underground Railroad for the Ohio Genealogical Society, that these
Mhm.
abolitionist families would marry into each other
Mhm.
just to kind of keep everything close to the vest, because this is highly illegal to free slaves. So you never
Mhm.
knew who you could trust. Well, George Edwards, he bought 750 acres of land and then
Mhm.
subdivided that between a dozen different abolitionists and created almost like a network, underground network where you could funnel slaves from house to house, kind of like a roulette wheel. And
Mhm.
slave owners come into the house, they could never find the slaves because they'd run through a underground tunnel to another person's house on that network there on Eagle Creek. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting. But yeah, my family is deeply connected in this story.
It makes it very personal. I
It
wish
does.
you much success. I'm looking forward to reading it myself. Can I steer us to a different piece of your work? I
Sure.
loved because we were just talking about, filler words and filter words and using strong words. And something that resonated with me was when you were talking about your wise words for repurposing work, and you talked
Uh,
about the phantom seer. And so, can you
mhm.
tell us, like, you've talked in the past about how your work has evolved. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. The Phantom Seer was originally a 10-page paper I wrote in high school in creative writing
Mm.
class, The Quest for
Mm.
Success or The Quest for Truth, something along those lines. And, I just made it an assignment. And it was a time travel adventure where the main character went back in time to try and, stop major events in history, and
Mhm.
ended up messing up his own future. Uh, so I enjoyed Quantum Leap at the time. So I do admit I stole a lot from Quantum Leap back in the day when I first wrote the article.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was looking for something uh, to something new. And I thought,
Mhm.
let's take this and make it into a novella. That's
Mhm.
20,000 words. I didn't want to make a full length novel out of it. It just wasn't a big desire. So I took this 10-page article and wrote it into a 20,000 word, sorry,
Mhm.
novella. And
Okay.
I rebranded it then The Phantom Seer.
Mm.
And it has some of the same uh, actions that Sam Miller from Russellville, Ohio, uh, so, some things that he did in that original story, but it was good. And I ended up just throwing it up on Amazon and publishing it myself because nobody wanted a novella. Every
Mhm.
time I would try and pitch the idea, the publisher or the agent, they'd say, "Oh, this is good, but we really want it to be a full length novel." It's like,
Mhm.
I've got a lot on my plate. I don't have time to write another 60,000 words to, maybe or maybe not get a publishing contract. I like it the way it is. So
Yeah.
I just publish it the way it was.
Awesome. Yeah. So tell us how many other works you have that are like unpublished or half finished.
No, there's a lot. Let me see here. I pulled that up somewhere. I've got at least half a dozen books. I don't have them all in front of me right now. Oh, they're there.
Mhm.
Let's see. So I've got after Indomitable, there's going to be some historical fiction books.
Mhm.
Dauntless is the next one. That's going to be on the story of James Edwards, George Edwards' father.
Mhm.
He was kidnapped from Scotland at the age of 13 and sold to George Washington's minister.
Oh, wow.
And then once he was freed, he served in the French and Indian War and the Revolutionary War and fought with Washington in Valley Forge. And then he came down the river and bought land in Ohio and founded the city of Aberdeen, Ohio. So
Okay.
that's the story of James Edwards. Then I'm going to go to Venerable, which will be the third
Mhm.
book, and that's going to be the story of George Edwards.
Mhm.
He had a fascinating life. He was a colonel in the War of 1812. He fought with Daniel Boone in the Northwest
Mhm.
Indian War. He was baptized in George Washington's church. I've got a picture of the baptismal he was baptized in.
Oh,
It's
cool.
it's a fascinating. He had a fascinating life. Lived to be 90, almost 99 years old. So uh, I've got a Bible commentary he used in 1815. Sitting on my shelf behind me. So then after that, I'm going to wrap it up with Esteemable, which is the story of Herbert Edwards. He was my
Mhm.
great grandfather. You see behind me, there's looks like some helmets. Those are
Mhm.
World War I helmets that he brought over from World War I. And there's a ship in the background on my wall. That's the boat he went over to France on. Spent a year and a half in France on the front lines.
Mhm.
Went through the battles of Saint Mihiel. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry.
Mhm.
um, and a lot of other different battles. So yeah, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to write a prequel to the Fairy Chronicles.
Mhm.
That's going to be called the Fairy Origins. I've got the Genesis of Fairy, the Demons of Fairy, the Druid of Fairy, and the Guardian of Fairy. And then I have three more sci-fi novels I want to write: Obscured Reality, Mirror Image, and The Lost City of Giants. The Lost City of Giants is actually based on a 1911 news article that a man went down into the Grand Canyon and discovered a cave filled with bones of 9 foot tall giants, and
Mm.
it had artifacts from China and all these other places around the world that you shouldn't have in America from that time period. He sent them all back to the Smithsonian, and after he did that, he disappeared. The items he sent back disappeared, and the Smithsonian said we never heard of this man.
Hmm.
So, what happened to him? Well, that's what this story is going to be about.
Interesting. Do you have a favorite genre? Because this is a very, you know, a wide variety.
I'd say fantasy is probably my favorite, but I do since I do so much with genealogy.
Mhm.
I enjoy the historical fiction.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of research, though. My
Yeah.
goodness, the research that goes into historical fiction. You'd think, oh, it's fiction. It doesn't matter. I
It does
want it. I
matter.
want it to be historically accurate. I mean, I
Yeah.
want as many facts in there as possible. Otherwise, it's just a fantasy novel to me.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's see. Let's talk a little bit about publishing, and maybe you mentioned before that some of the struggles that you had. Can you tell us the challenges you faced during your publication journey in the past?
Yeah, when I first tried to publish something, I fell in with a group called Publish America. They're what's called a vanity publisher,
Mm-hmm.
and they make you pay for everything. You have to pay for cover design, you have to pay for editing, you have to pay for marketing, you have to pay for promotions, you have to pay for every single book you get. Then even if you're going to do a display at a store, you have to pay for all of that. You have to, they just nickel and dime you to death. Well,
Yeah.
this particular one takes your rights for 5 years,
Mm.
and they end up going bankrupt. And they changed their name multiple times, trying to avoid bankruptcy and
Mhm.
different lawsuits. And I end up getting my rights back 1 month before they closed their doors.
Oh, wow. That's
And
fortunate.
when they closed their doors, a lot of writers never got the rights back. So they had to wait the full 5 years until it was dead, and then rewrite it and republish it, and it was a mess for them. So
Mhm.
that was really really bad, and I thought, I'm just going to self-publish at this point. So I self-published the book, and that I shouldn't have done that. I should have waited and found out why I was getting rejected in the first place.
Mhm.
Now that I know this editing process that I have, I would have rejected my book too back then. So
Mhm.
it needed to be rejected, but I didn't know that at the time. And
Mhm.
everybody who read it, gave me, glowing reviews. Oh, this is great. This is great. Well, that's helpful, but it's also not helpful, especially if it's not true, because then I have a false sense of security. I'd rather people tell me, it's a good story, but this needed work or this needed work, and give me real feedback rather than trying to, make me feel good, because
Right.
making me feel good still got me 107 rejections. So
Yeah.
I wanted to have honest feedback. So the publishing struggle was very, very hard. Finally, I fell in with, like I said, with Lulu and started self publishing. Uh,
Mhm.
I would pitch the new series. The book two was the Soul Stones of Fairy, and
Mhm.
then I had the Half Blood of Fairy and the Priestess of Fairy, and I would do pitches on Twitter, and publishers and agents, they loved it. They wanted more. They're like, "Oh, you've got the first book with this vanity publisher. Well, that's tainted goods. We can't touch the entire series." So because I
Mm.
made that mistake with the first book, it ruined it for the whole series. So I just went with Lulu, published it myself, and now that I've got Indomitable, I was picked up with by a publishing group, Edit Ingle Indie House, and they're not only interested in Indomitable, but I'm going to rewrite the Fairy Chronicles,
Oh.
and then I'll submit it to Edit Ingle and see if we can maybe get that as a new edition or
Mhm.
a revised edition, and let them take it and run with it. See if we can maybe grow. I mean, I've had a lot of success on my own, but it's been a lot of work. It's been more work than I imagined trying to
Yeah.
self publish. Everybody thinks, oh, it's you just throw it up on Amazon and boom, you're an author, and you are. But how do you get that marketed to other people? That's where the rubber hits the road, and it's very difficult if you don't have a following to
Mhm.
try and do it. You basically end up what I was doing when I first joined Twitter in 2012, is just shouting your book from the rooftops, and people just block you or mute you because
Yeah.
that they don't want to hear that all the time.
Right. It's much more engaging to hear like the what went into the story and to discuss your challenges as you were writing or as you were editing, and then you'll build kind of this within the community interest just organically.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's great. So can I ask what's your favorite part about writing and publishing?
Well, my favorite part about writing is getting it done. Because then when you're trying to write, I used to write what's called a pantster.
Mhm.
I would just write from the seat of my pants. I wouldn't really have an idea of where I was going, and I kind of merged that into what's called a planster, where
Mhm.
I come up. I take it's called free writing. You just
Mhm.
start writing up ideas, plot stories.
Yeah.
You may use them, you may not, but I try and get about 30 different plot articles, 1, 2, 3, just line them up on a page. And from there, I have a beginning and I have an end. So I kind of know where I want the book to go. But then
Mhm.
I just let the book grow on its own and take on a life of its own. With Indomitable, I didn't know how it was going to end until the last 2 pages. I just I didn't know. I had a completely different ending to the book than how it actually ended, and I like how it ended better than how I originally planned it. Usually, that's the
Amazing.
way it happens. When the book takes on a life of its own, and you just kind of
Yeah.
let that flow, it's more natural, and
Mhm.
you're not forcing it to go in a different direction. It's just building on itself, and it ends up almost writing itself when you do that.
So people want to know if you have a timeline as to when your other books will be published.
Not really. I know
Mhm.
that Indomitable will come out February 2022, but I'm
Mhm.
hoping to have another book every couple years. I promise I'm not going to be like George Martin, where it's 5 or 6 years between every book.
Very nice. All right. Well, I think you mentioned it before, but I'd love to remind people that where we can discover more about you and your work. So I'm going to put that link tree back out there. And this is last chance for questions um, before we wrap up. Let's see if we have any that I've missed.
While we're
Yeah.
waiting, for people who don't know, George Martin was an early beta reader of The Science of Fairy.
Oh, really?
Back in 2004. I'd maybe only done half the book at that time, but he read through it and he said the story was okay. Which okay, story was okay, but he hated the characters. The characters were boring, 2 dimensional, and yeah, it's like wow, all right.
Ouch.
So he gave me some advice. He says, never create a character you're unwilling to kill. He said,
Ooh.
yeah, he said when the reader knows that the character's safe, it's boring. Why read the story if you know the character's
Mm.
going to survive? He says you always have to leave the reader wondering, is this character going to make it to the end?
Yeah.
And I took that under advisement. So now in all of my books, even Indomitable, I kill off a couple people, you know, just as a tip of the hat to George Martin.
Yeah.
But I
Oh,
I
valuable
try and make it
advice.
yeah, if I try and make it flow with the plot also, not just murder for murder like he does in Game of Thrones. I actually try and make it advance the narrative a little bit.
Sure, sure. Well, that is awesome. I would love to just thank you again for giving us some of the time that you've dedicated today and telling us about your work. And I just want to say thanks to you and your fans. Thanks for joining us. This was fun.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I encourage everybody to check out Revision Division and JD Edwards, his work, and look forward to the next time. Take
Thank you.
care.
Bye.
Bye.